A Russian crypto scammer and his wife's remains found scattered across the desert in Dubai. A Chinese entrepreneur and crime boss extradited from Thailand to China for running a large scam compound. All of that and much more on this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly. On November 12th, Chinese-Cambodian businessman and crime boss Shi Zhejiang was extradited to China from Thailand after having been detained since August of 2022 when he was arrested by Thai police in Bangkok. He is wanted on charges of running illegal online gambling rings and had been a fugitive from China since 2012 after he was charged for running an illegal lottery business in the Philippines that targeted Chinese citizens, in which he netted approximately $298 million in profits. In 2014, he was convicted in absentia of these charges in a Shandong court. While on the run in 2017, Shi formed the Yatai International Holding Group, which he registered in Hong Kong. He relocated to Cambodia, where he obtained citizenship and legally changed his name to Tong Kriong Kai. Shi continued to operate illegal casinos in Cambodia as well as the Philippines. However, after both countries launched crackdown campaigns on illegal gambling, he set up shop in Shwe Koko, a town in the Kayin state of southeast Myanmar bordering Thailand. Shwe Koko is the headquarters of the Karen National Army, a military unit of the Myanmar junta made up of former insurgents from the Karen ethnic group. The Karen are a minority ethnic group that controls much of the region along the Burmese-Thai border and have been in conflict with the Burmese government since the late 1940s. They are just one of the many ethnic insurgent groups fighting the Myanmar junta. However, in the 1990s, the Karen National Army, then known as the Border Guard Forces or BGF, split off from the larger Karen insurgency and in 2010 made a deal with the Burmese government and incorporated itself into its military structure. The Karen National Army is led by Saw Chit Thu, who along with members of his family has long been believed to have profited from illegal activities such as drug trafficking, as well as allowing scam centers to operate in Shwe Koko, from which he and his family profit from. In 2017, Saw Chit Thu allegedly made a business arrangement with Shi Zhejiang to develop a 46-square-mile estate project called Yatai New City in Shwe Koko. Yatai New City was formed by Shi's Yatai Holdings Group along with Chit Lin Myang Company, a company owned by Saw Chit Thu's army. It has also been reported that another investor in Yatai New City is Wan Kwok Koi, or Broken Tooth, the notorious leader of the 14K Chinese Triad. However, Yatai City would eventually turn into just one of the many scam compounds operating in southeast Myanmar. And now just a brief rundown on the scam centers. They're essentially run by slave labor, as syndicates involved in the trade will advertise fake job listings online to individuals from different countries around the world. Then once the individual shows up to what they thought was a seemingly legitimate job, they have their passports confiscated and are essentially taken as prisoners. They are then sent to work in the scam centers where they are forced into scamming internet users across the world, most notably with cryptocurrency fraud and romance scams. These types of scams are commonly referred to as pig butchering scams, where victims' assets or funds are stolen. The enslaved workers are forced to work long, grueling hours and are threatened with organ harvesting or even being forced into prostitution if they do not succeed in their jobs as scammers. Scam compounds have proliferated across Southeast Asia since COVID-19, and since that time, more than 100,000 foreign nationals, most of them from countries across Southern and Southeast Asia, are said to have been lured to work in these scam centers. They are often sold off to other scam syndicates, which basically operate as large human trafficking rings. While efforts to establish this particular scam compound, Yatai City, were initially stalled by investigations stemming from Myanmar's then civilian government, the military coup and start of the civil war in Myanmar in 2021 took away attention from the issue and allowed Yatai City to greatly expand. During this time, Shi Zhejiang portrayed himself as a legitimate businessman and philanthropist, donating money for disaster relief as well as charity foundations to help poor citizens in Shwe Koko. These charitable acts would cause such great affection for Shi that in August 2024, 2 years after his arrest in Thailand, the Karen National Army organized a prayer service in Shi's honor where they wished him good health and prayed for his release from custody. After his arrest, Shi started making claims to different media organizations that he was in fact a Chinese spy and that he feared he would be killed by the Chinese government if he was returned to his home country. He was interviewed in an Al Jazeera documentary that aired in September of 2020 2024, where he claimed he was recruited as a spy while he was operating out of the Philippines in 2016. However, despite these accusations by Xi, nothing has come to light to validate his claims that he was recruited by Beijing as a spy. The fact that Xi is now in China almost certainly means that this is the end of his empire, as the Chinese government does not take its citizens being scammed very lightly, especially by one of its own. In addition to his gambling charges that he obtained in 2014, I'm sure that Xi will eventually be brought up on charges stemming from the scam compound in Shui Cocoa, and if convicted of these charges, it is likely that he will probably be sentenced to death. China has especially seemed to be cracking down recently on scam operators. I talked about the Ming family a few weeks ago and how many of its members were sentenced to death for operating scam centers very similar to Xi Zhejiang's. So to me, it makes sense that he might receive the death penalty or some other very harsh punishment. Seems to me that Xi Zhejiang is basically being made the scapegoat for running Shui Cocoa, as Saw Chit Thu, the leader of the Karen National Army, as well as Wan Kwok Koi, the leader of the 14K Triad, still operate freely, perhaps because they have the backing of Beijing, but that's a whole nother story, as it seems that China is very selective in who it goes after. But Xi Zhejiang's extradition back to China, I don't think, is going to impact the scam industry in Southeast Asia at all, especially considering when you have high government officials in countries like Myanmar and Cambodia directly benefiting from this illegal industry that generates hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And these scam compound concepts are spreading across other parts of the world, whether it be in the Middle East or Africa, as organized crime continues to evolve in the 21st century. On the afternoon of November 11th, Gilmondo Dani, the right-hand man of notorious Albanian mob boss Emiliano Shulazi, was leaving the Rennes airport in Tirana, Albania, after returning from a 4-day trip to Barcelona, Spain. Accompanying him was his friend Mustafa Shakiri, and events captured on airport cameras as the two drove through a roundabout on their way out of the airport. 3 gunmen armed with automatic weapons, including a Kalashnikov, emerged from a parked Toyota as the Mercedes-Benz carrying Dani and Shakiri slowed down and opened fire with more than 50 rounds before fleeing the scene. Dani, who was in the passenger seat, was killed instantly, while Shakiri was left seriously injured. The Toyota, believed to have been used by the shooters, was later found burned out in the village of Halil. Gilmondo Dani had a long criminal record going back almost 2 decades. In 2006, he was sentenced to a year in prison after being found in possession of multiple automatic weapons and other items, such as a police vest and night vision binoculars. In 2009, he was investigated for the murder of 4 police officers in the city of Durrës, but was never charged. Prior to his murder this past week, Gilmondo Dani had survived 2 previous attempts on his life, with one of them occurring in 2011 and the other in 2015, when he was in the company of his boss, Emiliano Shulazi. Shulazi is one of Albania's most notorious crime bosses, and he's linked to such activities as drug trafficking, but more prominently for his extortion endeavors. He has long been accused of blackmailing business owners to pay large sums of money or hand their properties over to him for free. In one case, he placed a bomb in the shop of a Tirana business owner after he refused his extortion demands. Shulazi is also a suspect in the 2005 murder of businessman Vadim Lama, who was killed when his apartment complex was blown up with explosives. Shulazi has long been accused of having strong links to Albania's political elite and is thought to have been used by politicians aligned with the Conservative Democratic Party of Albania to intimidate voters. In 2011, he was arrested after being accused by 2 Socialist Party MPs of attacking a campaign meeting in Tirana. In 2018, Shulazi and Dani, along with 4 other individuals, were convicted for extortion after having taken ownership of the Volga Hotel in Durrës forcefully and also for threatening a garage owner. Shulazi and Dani were sentenced to 14 and 12 years imprisonment, respectively. Dani was released from prison in October of 2024 after having served 2/3 of his sentence. Since his release from prison, Dani had maintained a low profile, spending most of his time in Barcelona, and prior to his murder was reportedly engaged to an architect. It is suspected that employees from the travel agency used by Dani and his friend Mustafa Shakiri potentially leaked information on the duo's trips to rivals of Dani. Gilmondo Donni's murder this past week is notable due to accusations being thrown around by powerful Albanian politicians to smear their political opponents. It has since been revealed that Donni's friend, who was injured in the shooting, Mustafa Shakiri, is in fact an agent of Albania's Police Supervision Agency, or AMP. Democratic Party leader and opposition leader Sali Berisha has claimed that Shakiri once worked as a political campaigner for Socialist Party member and current Albanian Minister of Interior Ervin Hasha. Berisha also stated that Gilmondo Donni once worked as a bodyguard and financier for current Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sports Blendi Gonsha, who has vehemently denied these accusations. There's been a lot of controversy lately surrounding the link between politics and organized crime in Albania, and both sides of the political spectrum have been slinging mud at their political opponents, accusing them of being aligned with gangsters. Sali Berisha, the leader of the opposition in Albania, has long been accusing the current Prime Minister, Edi Rama, of giving gangsters a free pass and allowing them to operate freely in the country while they launder their vast profits from activities such as cocaine trafficking and extortion through massive construction projects occurring throughout Albania, particularly in the city of Durrës. My personal opinion, I wouldn't be surprised at all if both of these parties are very much entrenched with criminals, and they're just trying to deflect by accusing their rivals of being complicit in organized crime. It is true that gangsters in Albania are in a lot of ways untouchable, and this has allowed them to become arguably the preeminent players in international cocaine trafficking, with Albanian ports being one of the top entry points for cocaine into the European market. Now, this story is a perfect example of the toxic political atmosphere in Albania that is potentially plagued with high levels of corruption and organized crime. As some would say, powerful Albanian politicians are the protectors of gangsters such as Gilmondo Donni, as well as the Albanian cocaine traffickers who are gradually starting to completely take over the European cocaine trade. This week it was revealed that the mutilated remains of Russian crypto entrepreneur Roman Novak and his wife Anna, both of whom would have constantly posed for pictures to display their lavish lifestyle on social media, were discovered across various trash bins as well as out in the desert in the United Arab Emirates, all the way back on October 4th. The discovery of their remains came just 2 days after they were reported missing, when on October 2nd they were on their way to meet supposed investors on a lake near Dubai's Hatta Mountain Resort. According to the driver who drove them to the lake, they then entered a Range Rover and were driven off. The Novaks were then supposedly kidnapped and taken to a rented villa, where the kidnappers demanded the password to Roman Novak's cryptocurrency wallet. A mysterious message was soon sent out from Novak's crypto account saying, quote, "I urgently need to send $200,000 for work to people," end quote. However, it is believed that somehow the kidnappers then discovered that Novak's crypto wallet was empty, and that is when they killed the couple, mutilating their bodies before disposing parts of the bodies in a shopping mall, trash bin, and burying what remained in the desert near the coastal city of Fujairah. Prior to his gruesome murder, Roman Novak was notorious in the crypto world for all of the wrong reasons. He was the founder of the crypto wallet service Fintopio, and he presented himself as a successful entrepreneur, claiming that he was very closely connected to Telegram founder Pavel Durov. Novak was able to raise around $500 million from investors, primarily from Russia, China, and the Middle East. However, the whole crypto platform turned out to be nothing but a scam, and Novak ran off with the investors' money. In November of 2020, Novak was convicted in a Russian court of fraud and sentenced to 6 years in a St. Petersburg prison. He would be released in 2023 and would then relocate along with his family to Dubai, where he continued to engage in shady financial dealings, which would eventually culminate in him and his wife's double execution last month. By observing surveillance cameras that captured the perpetrators disposing of the remains, the Emirati police were able to identify them, who all turned out to be Russian. Working with the Russian authorities, it was determined that the suspects immediately fled the UAE after the murders before making their way back to Russia. En route, the phones of the murdered couple were detected in Oman and South Africa, and it is believed that the murderers traveled through these countries when making their escape. As of now, 4 suspects have been detained in Russia for their alleged roles in the double murder, and a couple of them have been identified. One of them is Konstantin Schacht. Oddly enough, a former homicide investigator from the city of Viborg. In 2007, Schacht was arrested in St. Petersburg and was accused of being part of a criminal group distributing cocaine, heroin, hashish, and LSD. For these crimes, he was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment and was released after serving 13. After being released, Schacht went into the real estate business and became the head of the St. Petersburg real estate firm Northwest Tender Consulting Company. He arrived in the UAE just one day before the Novaks disappeared. Amongst the other suspects are Yuri Sharipov, a kitchen installer previously implicated in a murder back in 2003, along with Vladimir Dalikin, a former ambulance driver. Both of these men recently served in the war in Ukraine, but were discharged due to health reasons. Of the remaining suspects that are still at large, one is believed to have fled to Georgia. They are all believed to be under 25 and recruited and paid through the Telegram app to participate in the extortion turned double murder. The arrested suspects have been ordered detained until December 28th, with one of the suspects, Yuri Sharipov, having been denied house arrest after admitting his guilt. It seems very odd that all these people from completely different backgrounds would come together and plot this extortion scheme against this well-known crypto scammer. I feel like there's much more to this story that hasn't been discovered yet. Who knows if any of this will ever come out. From what it sounds like, it's also possible that the Novak couple's murderers were investors in his prior crypto scam and that they possibly were taking revenge for their losses. Or also the fact that Novak and his wife bragged about their lifestyles on social media. I feel like that would make them an easy target, as individuals looking for a quick buck would potentially see that they could take whatever they wanted from Novak. However, that was not the case, as they walked away with nothing. But crypto entrepreneurs are frequently targeted in extortion plots, and Roman Novak is definitely not the first. The crypto world in itself attracts very shady characters, as it is often a very easy way for criminals to launder money. I wouldn't be surprised if Novak potentially was affiliated with some people that used him to launder their money. I'm wondering if potentially his murderers knew him before the plot was carried out, as it also seems that Novak and his wife trusted the individuals they were meeting with and suspected that nothing was going to go wrong. But to me, there's a whole lot more about this case that needs to be uncovered. And I think this story just goes to show that when you scam very rich people, often it comes back to bite you. And in the case of Roman Novak and his wife, it ended up with them being killed and their bodies being mutilated and strewn all across the United Arab Emirates. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just want to remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe so we can help grow this channel. Also, please make sure to support my channel. You can do that by just contributing $2.99 a month. Any contribution is greatly appreciated, and it helps me to continue making these videos. I'll be back next week to report on more stories concerning the global criminal underworld. Thank you so much for tuning in.